back to my channel. I hope the last video of thyroid was useful to you. So today we will start with the next part of thyroid. So today what we will see is the embryology of thyroid, the benign conditions of thyroid that include the goiter, Graves' disease and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. One by one we will look one after the another. Now starting with the embryology of the thyroid, we have to know from where the thyroid gland develops. So the thyroid gland develops from the thyroglossal tract, and the thyroglossal tract develops from the foramen cecum. And where is the foramen cecum? The foramen cecum is located in the tongue, that is in the anterior 2/3 and the posterior 1/3 junction में the foramen cecum is located. So from the foramen cecum the thyroglossal tract develops and it descends towards the neck, and where it reaches the tracheal cartilage it splits into two. So the tract which develops, it gets obliterated in the future course and the remnant remains as the thyroid gland. So the tract which fully develops from the foramen cecum to the tracheal cartilage, it obliterates totally. So if the thyroglossal tract, which if it remains patent, so from that the thyroglossal cyst will develop. So the most common location of the thyroglossal cyst is the subhyoid region, and what are the symptoms of the thyroglossal cyst is there is a swelling, and that is a midline swelling, and there is a protrusion while during deglutition and during the protrusion of the tongue. So what is the problem in the cyst? So if there is a long-standing thyroglossal cyst, it will develop into a papillary thyroid cancer. So we have to remove it as soon as we diagnose it. Now how will we diagnose it? So we have to do the FNAC of the cyst as to see if it is a thyroglossal cyst, and we have to do the USG of the neck. Why we have to do the USG of the neck? Because to see if there is any presence of the normal thyroid gland. So why we have to look that we have to understand that if you remove the total thyroglossal cyst and there is no thyroid gland left, normal thyroid gland left, and the thyroid tissue was present in the thyroglossal cyst, so we cannot opt to remove the whole thyroid tissue. So we have to look for if any normal thyroid tissue is present or not. And what surgery we have to do? The name of the surgery is the cyst trunk operation. Now what is the cyst trunk operation is, we have to remove the thyroglossal cyst and till a cyst and the tract till the base of the tongue. So till we have to trace the tract till the base of the tongue, we have to remove the tract, and also a part of the hyoid bone. So a part of the hyoid bone is also removed along with the thyroglossal cyst. Now second is what you have to remember is we should never do a incision and drainage, that is IND, to the thyroglossal cyst. Now why we shouldn't do? Because if we do a IND, the cyst will turn into a fistula. So we should always remember what should we never do, because during my UG days my professors used to tell me that a doctor should know what he shouldn't do. He should not do, he should know, but only if he knows what he shouldn't do, he will save the patient. Now second is what will happen if we do or IND, or if the thyroglossal cyst ruptures. So it will turn into a thyroglossal fistula. So there will be continuous leakage of the fluid, and it will become infectious. So that will turn into a fistula, and for that also we have to do the same cyst trunk operation. We have to remove the fistula till the base of the tongue and also the hyoid bone. So this cyst trunk surgery, the name you have to remember. Now third, what is the embryological abnormality is the lingual thyroid. So now what is the lingual thyroid? That is the part of the thyroid tissue is present toward the tongue. Okay, so for that also you have to do the USG neck to see for any normal thyroid tissue. So if there is presence of any normal thyroid tissue, so we can remove the lingual thyroid. If not present, we have to let the lingual thyroid to be as it is. Okay, so this was in brief about the embryological thyroid conditions. Now going into the benign thyroid disorders, that is goiter. Then we will see about hyperthyroidism and its disorders, hypothyroidism and its disorders. Now in goiter, we have two types of goiter, that is the diffuse goiter and the multinodular goiter. Now in diffuse goiter, you have it is also called as physiological goiter. Now why it is called as physiological goiter? Because it is present during the pregnancy or during puberty. So why it is present during in common conditions like pregnancy and puberty? Because the demand of the iodine in the female is higher. So the thyroid needs more iodine, so it will keep on proliferating, but it will be in a diffused condition. That is, the enlargement will be of the same nodularity and the structure. So if you palpate, if it is a diffuse goiter, you have to prescribe the patient iodine rich food. Okay, and it is also prevalent mostly in the iodine deficient areas. Now we'll see about the multinodular goiters. Now in multinodular goiters, you have the variable secretion of TSH from the pituitary gland. So the secretion of the TSH is in variable amount. So there will be enlargement of the thyroid tissue here and there. So there will be multinodular in structure. And what else is the most active site is the internodular area. So the areas between the nodules is the active site. Now what else you have to remember is that there is two types, that is isolated nodule and dominant nodule, multinodular goiter. So what is the difference between isolated and dominant? Now in isolated is when you palpate the thyroid, the only a single nodule is palpable and the other whole thyroid tissue is not palpable. So that is isolated, that is only one is palpable. But when you look for the dominant thyroid, so in that the rest of the gland is also palpable, along with the single multinodular goiter is also, the tissues are also palpable along with the rest of the gland. And so that is called as the dominant thyroid nodule and isolated thyroid nodule. We also have a solitary thyroid nodule in which there is only one thyroid, the nodule is palpable. Okay, so for this, all this we have to, if we see a solitary or a multinodular enlargement, we have to follow the routine investigations like a USG, TSH, thyroid profile, and if needed we can do a FNAC of the neck. So okay, now we'll look upon for the retrosternal goiter. Now what is retrosternal goiter is? The goiter is behind the sternum. It is not palpable over the neck. Now there are two types of retrosternal goiter, that is primary and secondary. Now what is primary? In primary, the ectopic tissue is present over the mediastinum. So it doesn't arise from the neck, it is present in the mediastinum and the supply for the tissue is by the mediastinal vessels. And what is the secondary retrosternal goiter is? The goiter starts in the neck but goes into the mediastinum. So if it is in the neck, so the supply of the ectopic tissue is by the thyroid vessels. Now what are the symptoms? They are the dyspnea, stridor and swelling is present. So the patient comes to the OPD with these complaints. So we have to look for the goiter, and if it is not palpable, the lower limit of the swelling is not palpable. So we have to, what investigation we have to do? We have to do a CECT for the neck and the thorax, because if it is in the mediastinum, we have to do thorax. Now there is one special sign in this which is called as the Pemberton sign. In what is the Pemberton sign? If there is, the patient elevates the arm, so there is the compression of the mediastinal vessels and all his face will turn into red. That is, facial congestion is seen when there is elevation of the arm. And if the patient is a dark individual, we have to see the conjunctival congestion. Okay, so this is about the retrosternal goiter. So guys, now we will see about hypoparathyroidism. Now what is the cause of hypoparathyroidism? It is due to the vascular injury to the parathyroid vessels, and it may occur due to ischemia or while during the thyroidectomy surgeries. Now how to detect that? That is after 48 to 72 hours after the surgery, there is a perioral numbness and tingling sensation. That is the first sign which is seen in the patient. And then there is carpopedal spasm, and there is tetany, and it leads to respiratory distress. Now respiratory distress is the cause of death. It is the reason for the cause of death. Now there are two signs in which we have to see in the parathyroid patient. That is, one is the Trossus sign. What is Trossus sign? Is when you inflate the BP cuff above the systolic blood pressure level, it will lead to the carpopedal spasm. The hands will become like this, and it is also called as obstetrician's hand deformity because it looks like we are doing a PV examination. So the hand becomes like this. This is called as Trossus sign. Now what is Skopchak's sign? The Skopchak sign is when we tap over the facial nerve, it will lead to the tingling, the twitching sensation like this. It will go like twitch. So that is called as Skopchak sign. This both signs are seen in a patient of hypoparathyroid disorder. Now what next we have to do is we have to see if there are severe symptoms and the level of the serum calcium is less than 8 mg per deciliter. We have to give him oral calcium gluconate, calcium tablets, and vitamin D3. Okay, so we have to supplement him calcium gluconate. But if there are only minor symptoms and if the calcium is more than 8, because the value is of the normal calcium is 8 to 10 milligram, and if it is more than 8 and there are only minor symptoms, so we will give him only oral calcium supplements and vitamin D3. So by this we can save the patient. So we'll see about hypothyroidism. Here the patient has complaints of dull skin, alopecia, constipation, weight gain, cold intolerance, lethargy, then menorrhagia. So we have to do the initial investigation. So the TSH will be very high and T3, T4 will be very less. Now what are the causes of hypothyroidism is, it can be due to iodine deficiency. It is more prevalent in iodine deficiency areas leading to goiter. Then there is Wolff-Chaikoff syndrome, in which there is iodine induced. So due to iodine also it can lead to hypothyroidism. Then there is Sheehan syndrome. Due to Sheehan syndrome there is decreased TSH, so the hormones will also decrease. And then you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, D-covariant thyroiditis, Riedel's thyroiditis, which in coming videos we will see what they are. Then you have the dishormonogenesis is also present, in which hormone synthesis is decreased. Then euthyroid 6 syndrome is also there, in which the hormones are less but the TSH is normal. And then there is Reffeltov syndrome. What is Reffeltov is, there is end organ resistance to T4 synthesis. So the TSH is normal, but once the hormones are released, the receptors they don't uptake the hormones. So there is end organ resistance leading to there is hypothyroidism. Now what we will see in detail is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now what happens in Hashimoto's thyroiditis is there is autoantibody. It is an autoimmune disorder. So it is associated with HLA, D3, B8, and it is also associated with Down syndrome and Turner syndrome. In it the patient has prolonged hypothyroidism, and because due to the antibodies, there are against blocking antibodies against thyroid receptors, TPO and thyroglobulin. So there is, due to the antibodies, it will totally destroy the follicles and leading to the prolonged hypothyroidism. Now here the patient has very enlarged swelling, and long-standing Hashimoto's can also lead to follicular thyroid cancer. Now what we will see is what are the pathology in Hashimoto's. You can see Hurther cells. Now Hurther cells are specific cells for Hashimoto's, and they are also seen in lymphoma and also seen in follicular thyroid cancer, because eventually Hashimoto's it is leading to follicular, so we also see Hurther's in that. So what here we have to do is, as it is autoimmune, we have to give steroids and keep observing the patient. Now next is there is Riedl's thyroiditis. In what happens in Riedl's thyroiditis is there is association with IgG4. So IgG4 is also seen in Peyronie's disease and in Dupuytren's contracture. And due to IgG4, the thyroid will become like woody hard, that is fixed thyroid, woody hard swelling, and so we can mistake it for anaplastic thyroid cancer also. We have to do in this is we have to go ask the patient to do the true cut biopsy, and eventually we can differentiate if it is Riedl's thyroiditis or it is anaplastic cancer. Here also the patient comes with swelling. Now what treatment we will give? So we will give steroids and tamoxifen we have to give for decreasing the fibrosis. Now third thyroid hypothyroid disorder is D. Quervain's thyroiditis. It is also called as granulomatous thyroiditis. So what is the difference between D. covariance and Riedl's? So in D. covariance there is painless neck swelling. The enlargement, it is single and it is very painless, normal. But in Riedl's thyroiditis, it is a thyroiditis, so it is painful neck swelling. Now in D. covariance, as it is painless, so what happens here is there is also hypothyroidism, and it will lead to first there will be destruction of follicles, but how it will occur is due to any viral disease or something. So if it is a URTI, so after URTI, any predisposing condition, after 6 weeks it will lead to the destruction of follicles, and it will be a single attack. That is, first there will be attack due to the viral infection. So first there will be a shoot of the hormones, it will lead to hyperthyroid. The curve will be, first there will be hyperthyroid, and then it will decrease, and there will be a single attack which will lead to decrease of the hormones, and there will be hypothyroidism. But after some time it will recover, like the patient will be treated by his own, but recover, so he will become normal and the hormones will be back to normal. But this will not happen in Hashimoto's. There will be surge, first hyper, then hypothyroid, prolonged, there will be prolonged hypothyroidism. But in D. covariance, it will be first hyper, then hypo, and then the curve will come back to the baseline. So this we have to remember in D. covariance thyroiditis. So now we will see about hyperthyroidism. In hyperthyroidism, the clinical features are exactly the opposite of hypothyroid. That is, the patient is thin, the patient is irritable, then diarrhea, weight loss, and weight loss is in spite of very good appetite, and there is heat intolerance and oligomenorrhea. So now the patient comes with like weight loss and without any reason. So we have to find out the cause, like what is the cause of the weight loss. So eventually we can lead to hyperthyroidism. Now what are the causes of hyperthyroidism is it may be due to Graves' disease, that is an autoimmune condition against the thyroid follicles, and second is it may be due to Jod-Basedow phenomena, in which the iodine will lead to hyperthyroidism. Then it can be due to pituitary adenoma due to increased secretion of TSH. Then it can be due to solitary toxic nodule, Plummer's disease, and these all lead to increase in secretion of TSH. Also there can be TSH secreting thyroid adenoma. Then another that can be struma ovary. What is struma ovary? There is an ectopic tissue over the ovary which has thyroid tissue in it, so it will lead to increase in TSH. So in factitious hyperthyroidism, what is that the patient takes thyroxine tablets exogenously. So there is no problem in the TSH or in the pituitary, but due to excessive intake of thyroid tablets, it leads to hyperthyroidism. So usually what we do is, if there is low TSH and there is features of hyperthyroidism, we do a thyroid scan, that is the iodine scan and a technetium scan that we do in case of hyperthyroid features. But in factitious hyperthyroidism and in struma ovary, there will be no increase in the thyroid iodine uptake because there is no problem in the thyroid tissue. So first we'll see the management of hyperthyroidism. So it can be managed by drugs alone. Then we can also give radioactive iodine. We can also give do drugs followed by surgery. Now what are the drugs we give is propylthiouracil also we can give, and we can also give carbimazole. Now carbimazole is involved in the blocking of the TPO antibodies, and propylthiouracil will also inhibit TPO and receptor. It also will block the thyroid receptors. Now carbimazole is contraindicated in the first trimester of pregnancy, so we usually give propylthiouracil. Now what we have to remember is before doing a surgery of the thyroid, we have to make the patient euthyroid. That is, if we diagnose the patient as hyperthyroid, we have to give the antithyroid drugs for like 6 to 8 weeks before the intervention, and we have to make the patient euthyroid, check the TSH again, and then we have to do the surgery. Now why we have to do such things is because if we operate the patient when he is hyperthyroid, it will lead to a thyroid storm. So the patient will go into tachycardia, respiratory distress, and we can lose the patient. So what we have to do is first make the patient euthyroid by giving propylthiouracil or carbimazole, and we have to give till the evening before the surgery. And we have also we have to give beta blockers, that is nadolol, propranolol, for the decreasing the anxiety and the increase in the thyroid levels. And Lugol's iodine is also given 7 to 10 days before the surgery. Now after surgery you can see the TSH levels and discontinue the treatment, but you have to still continue the propranolol, because even after the surgery the thyroid hormones are still in the circulation, so it can lead to the tachycardia and anxiety levels to the patient. So we have to continue the beta blockers to the patient for at least 7 to 10 days. So now let's talk about Graves' disease. It is also the same autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, but here it leads to hyperthyroidism, and it is more common in females as in males. Mostly all autoimmune conditions are common in females. First it was called as LAS, that is long acting stimulating antibodies, and now they are called as TSH receptor antibodies. Here the patient has all the features of hyperthyroidism. Same, he is lean and weight loss, and there can be diarrhea and all stuff. Now what we have to see is the histopathology of the Graves' disease. Here we can see the tall columnar cells, and there is scalloping of the collar. So the whole thyroid follicle is taken up by the columnar cells, and only a small colloid tissue is left. And here we can significantly see the eye signs of the patient, because the patient presents with exophthalmos, and we can see the von Dreyfus sign, Stelbeck sign, Geoffroy sign, Dalrymple sign. All signs we can see that we have discussed in the previous video. And for the eye signs, we have to first cure the hyperthyroid, then the eye cells will resolve on its own. Now what we have to do here is we have to do the thyroid scan, because the features of hyperthyroid is present. So there will be diffuse uptake of the iodine in the thyroid tissue. And now what is the management of the Graves' disease? Now we will give drugs, but there are categories, like in every patient we cannot give drugs. So if it is a child with Graves, we will give drugs. If it is a pregnant patient, we will give propylthiouracil. If it is an adult but he is more than 45 years old, so we will give drugs followed by radioiodine ablation, because surgery is not recommended in more than 45. Same it is with elderly patient. In elderly patient also we have to give drugs followed by radioiodine ablation. But if it is adult and he is having goiter with hyperthyroid features, then we have to do drugs followed by surgery, because the goiter is present, it can lead to compression effect, so we have to remove the goiter, so we have to do surgery. What surgery we do is, preferably we do total thyroidectomy. So guys, this is about today's video. We have completed the embryology, we have completed the benign thyroid conditions, hyperthyroid, hypothyroid, Graves, Hashimoto's, everything we have completed. Now in tomorrow's video we will see the last part of thyroid, that is about the malignant conditions of all thyroid neoplasms, and we will complete our thyroid module. Till then, see all my videos and stay safe, take care, bye.